video, you got to go back to part one because some reason yesterday when I was giving you the story, my account just cut off. I'm not sure why. Not going to speculate. But I was telling you about how in the committee hearing, that the independent media was arrested by the Idaho State Police for sitting in the exact same place they were sitting before. And it was a big commotion, and there was 20 to 25 Idaho State Police officers that actually came in the committee hearing and arrested a woman and a man that was independent media, and it was directed by the committee chairman right before he ordered them to leave. The sergeant in arms whispered something into his ear. We don't really know what that was. Anyhow, so I saw this commotion. I saw how what was happening was wrong, and how it seemed to be instigated. I also saw ISP. Seemed like they were planning something about 35 minutes before the meeting, since they were all there. At least this similar amount of officers was there. Anyway, so then throughout this chaos, I stand up and I take my phone out and I start filming, and I walk around pretty much the chaos, not getting too much involved in it because there wasn't really any reason to. And I walked around and I went and sat in the press box where the independent media was, and I just sat there and didn't say a word, didn't do anything. And pretty soon they had arrested everybody, and people were following them. And they were upset with the Idaho State Police, and there was a kind of a regular little upheaval going on there, and people are not very happy about what they were doing to us at the Capitol building. And I was sitting at the press box, and some people kind of came around and talked to me for a little bit, but eventually most of the room was cleared out, and it was just a handful of people left, and I'm still sitting there. And I knew that the Lincoln Auditorium is closed till 7 o'clock. However, sometime before then, they had decided that they were going to close the Lincoln Auditorium at 5 o'clock. And so at 5:05, they come in and they trespassed me and arrested me. And, for basically sitting at the press box and not leaving the room, or whatever excuse they had. I mean, I know the Lincoln Auditorium is normally open till 7 p.m. So whatever excuse they made it up, and then they trespassed me and arrested me. And so I was being peaceful, non-disruptive. I wasn't bothering anybody. I was just sitting there quietly. And I was doing it in basically, in the attitude of saying, look, you're not going to just take the right of the press away from the people. That's basically what you're not going to do. So anyhow, and I made them drag me out because I don't assist or resist, So I made them drag me out, and they dragged me out. They put me on a chair and rolled me out, and charged me with trespassing and obstruction of justice because I wouldn't help them, and resisting arrest. Anyway, because I wouldn't help them. And I spent, actually not very much time. I spent several hours, but then someone bailed me out, which I really didn't want them to do, but they bailed me out, and I told them thank you. I walked a few miles down to the Albertsons, talked to some guy who had a cell phone in the parking lot, let me call my wife, and she come and got me and went home. And so I'm thinking, well, that happened. I was kind of surprised that happened, but it was obviously what was happening. The prior day when we went into the gallery, the Idaho State Police and the Speaker of the House was, kind of wanting to reassert their authority. They felt disrespected by us pushing our way into the House gallery, and they wanted to reassert their authority and get back at us. And they thought that somehow I was the one that was instigating it. So then they, had the opportunity to basically make an issue out of it with me. So, I sleep in my own bed that night, wake up the next morning, and then now the Senate is in session, and I feel like I should go back. And this time I didn't even know what they were really like. They were trespassing me. I knew that, but I didn't know like the details of it, whatever. Evidently, the trespass they trespass with me with says I can't be on the property for a year, which is something that is completely wrong when it comes to the Capitol building. You're supposed to be able to participate and do the things you need to do. But anyway, I went back and I went and sat in the Senate gallery and was there for a little bit. And the Senate went to session or to recess for a little bit. And here comes the Director of Administration, Keith Reynolds, Blake Higley, the ISP sergeant, and a handful of other officers, and tried to hand me a paper, which I refused and said I had a legal right to be here and I had a lawful right to be here. And they said they didn't care and surrounded me and arrested me and drugged me off and took me to jail again. And I spent, the rest of that day, because it was like 10 o'clock in the morning, I spent the rest of that day, that night, and a part of the next day. And then bailed out and went home. And that was another set of trespassing charges, resisting arrest and obstructing justice. Literally, I never did anything disruptive, never did anything not, to try to stop the process at the Capitol building. I was just there, completely peaceful, and I was just sitting there both times, not bothering anybody when they arrested me. So anyhow, so now I've been litigating my case. I've been having a whole lot of fun over the last 7 months, litigating my case. And I've written like literally a book of motions. I've got like 4 of these 3-ring binders clear full of motions. And I've been fighting multiple attorneys. Like I've been fighting, for example, because I have all of these people that are, from the state of Idaho, Idaho State Police, Sheriff's Office, Boise PD, all that were kind of part of this. So I've been trying to get them, these witnesses in my trial. So I've been subpoenaing them, and then they've been getting lawyers and trying to quash my subpoenas, and there's been this litigation going on. And one of these was that Idaho calculates the speedy trial, where if you can't go to, well, it'd be a speedy trial violation if it's over 180 days since the time you were arrested. And that is a long time. That's 6 months, of course, but most states are like 60 or 70. Anyway, so I filed a motion that I wrote, and it was basically warning the judge. The title of it was a notice of foreseen speedy trial rights violation. And I informed the court that they had miscalculated the speedy trial calculation, and that according to the correct calculations, February 24th was the day I was supposed to go to trial or before. And the state, the prosecutors, responded back, and this is an important thing for us to understand. And this is something that you and I need to be able to get our minds wrapped around, because this is the way they think. So they responded back and said, okay, basically that we don't disagree with you in your calculations. So I got that right. I must have got it right, or they would have certainly tried to object to that. So basically, we agree with you that you're supposed to have your trial on or before February 24th. However, this Idaho Supreme Court, because of COVID, has suspended jury trials indefinitely. So therefore, and they have said that, they're the ones that get to make that decision. And so this is their conclusion, and this is important. They said, therefore, the defendant, that's me, cannot demand something to which he has no right. Now think about that. I'm demanding a right to a fair and speedy trial, which is protected by the Constitution, protected by the Idaho Constitution. And because of COVID, they said the Supreme Court says basically you don't have that right anymore. And so, and the prosecutor is arguing that the defendant cannot demand something to which he has no right. Then they go on, the state requests the court to deny the defendant's petition to calculate his speedy trial date based on irrelevant and inapplicable law. The irrelevant and inapplicable law that they're talking about is the United States Constitution and the state of Idaho's Constitution, because they're saying that the Supreme Court overrules that. And therefore, you and I, according to them, do not have a right. So therefore, we can't demand a right that doesn't belong to us. And this is the way these people think. It's very sick. And this is the danger that we're in. They don't believe that unless they or the bureaucratic head or the government official, unless they say it, they don't believe that we have rights. They believe that they created the right and have granted it to the people, rather than God has created us and granted us rights, and they only come from him, or not granted us. He actually gave us rights. God has made us agents unto ourselves. He told us that we're agents unto ourselves. Basically, he created us. He gave us a conscience. He gave us the ability to think and to act for ourselves. And then he says, you are an agent unto yourself. And if we choose, we can give ourselves back to him and follow him. And we do that through a contract, through a covenant, through baptism, where we promise him that we will follow him, that we remember him. And when we take the sacrament each week or whenever we get it, then we are actually renewing that covenant that we made to him. But it's us as agents unto ourselves contracting or covenanting with God to obey him as free agents. Or maybe we choose not to as somebody, and we might follow Satan or follow a wicked path. But that's ours to do. God has given. Now we'll have consequences for that, but that is ours to do. But what they're saying, what the prosecutors and the judge and all these people are saying, is that we're not agents unto ourselves. We are, they are the sovereign, and we are the subjects. And we only have rights because they granted them to us. And therefore, as they said in here, defendant, or me or you, cannot demand something to which he has no right. So anyway, I could go through so many different things through this litigation that has been so revealing. And also, I will say, as far as the case goes, that remember there's two charges. Well, I was able to litigate and show them how legally the second charge, when they arrested me, legally they did it unlawful. They did it illegally. And so I was able, through the motions and through litigation, show them how they did that, and the judge basically had to dismiss it. Although he didn't want to, they had to, because ultimately they didn't have the proper authority. And I actually believe that the second charge, trespass charge, is also going to be dismissed. But of course, as you saw Monday, I had trial. And so, like a good boy, at 8:15 in the morning was when the trial was supposed to start. I show up a little before. I go into the courthouse, and they say I have to wear a mask. And I've told them multiple times, I've even litigated, I've told them that I don't wear a mask. And the reason I don't is because I don't feel it's right. And I actually feel strong enough about it. My conscience is telling me not to wear a mask, that there's something wrong with it, that it's a symbol of control and a symbol of something that is very wrong that is happening. And so I have felt that it would be a direct sin against my conscience if I was to put on a mask, especially for political reasons. And I mean, I've wore a mask, a mask for when I paint vehicles. I like to do that, or I'm working on something in the shop. Of course, I still do that. But there's no way I can put a mask on to, go out in public, to go to a building, to do any of that stuff. That's along with this COVID stuff, because it's a lie and it's deception. And I know as a just man that I am not to participate in deception. I am not even to act in any form or fashion that I am deceiving somebody. And I know better. I know what that mask is. I know what it means. And I also know that I would offend God if I was to put on a mask. And so it's a very sacred thing to me, a very real thing to me that burns deep in my heart. And I can't explain why some people feel it and some people don't, but it burns in my heart that I should not put on a mask, that I would sin against my conscience, that I would offend God, and therefore I can't. I can't. For those reasons alone. So I show up at the courthouse and they won't let me in. They physically are blocking the door. I physically tried to open the door and they physically are blocking the doors with armed officers. And they have the whole corridor inside with officers, and I can't get in. And there's, of course, people here coming to support, to witness the trial. I have witnesses that are there, and none of us are allowed in. None of us. And so, people kind of start making some noise and so forth, and the time goes on. And then it's probably now about, say about 10 o'clock or a couple hours later, almost 10 o'clock. And we get word, because people are looking online and so forth, we get word that they just issued a warrant for my arrest and Aaron Schmidt's arrest, who's also, on the case with me and also was arrested, and very, very good man. And they said that they issued a warrant for our arrest for failure to appear. Failure to appear to the trial, when we're literally standing outside the courtroom trying to get in, and they won't let us in. Then they issue a warrant for our arrest with failure to appear. Remember, this is a misdemeanor trespassing charge. One of the charges just got dropped, so we only have one left, and it's a misdemeanor trespassing charge, and they now issue a warrant for our arrest for failure to appear with a $10,000 bond. The officers that actually even arrested us and booked us into the jail couldn't believe, they'd never even heard of such a thing. A misdemeanor trespassing charge with a $10,000 bond. And so anyway, basically what they did is they sent swarms of officers, the sheriffs and Boise PD, and just came in and just started pushing people over. They knocked a woman over. They knocked a man over. He fell over, hit his head on the concrete. They took him out of there in an ambulance. Just a bunch of thugs coming in, like literally a bunch of thugs. And I don't know what they're thinking. They have no respect or decency. In fact, I kind of do know what they're thinking. And basically, they don't believe that the people and them are equal. They believe that they're higher than the people. They believe, and that's what causes them to be able to be so disrespectful to the people, because they don't believe that they're equal. They believe that they're above them. And they've actually been trained that. And they've been trained that, if anybody even touches you, you can file assault and put someone in prison for 5-10 years. And the laws are not equal. The laws protect them so that they can actually hurt people, steal things, abuse people, literally, completely abuse and damage people, and the law protects them. And if the same thing ever happens to them by somebody else, then the law really comes down on that person, and it's a huge inequality. And as you know, all people are supposed to be equal, and it doesn't matter just because you're an officer. If you hurt somebody intentionally, or if you disrespect somebody or damage somebody's property, you're still going to be accountable to God. And you don't get to just do those things and think, well, I'm an officer, because God don't care. God's going to put you there equal to your fellow man, equal to your brother and sister, and say, okay, this is what you did, and this is the accountability that you will receive from that, unless that person repents and asks for the Lord Jesus Christ to cover his sins. And that's just the way it is. That's the justice of God. All sins will be paid for. All wrongs will be made right. And it doesn't matter if you're an officer or if you work for the government. That's exactly what will happen. So anyhow, they come in, knocking people over, hurting people, throwing people to the ground, and then they arrest me, drag me into the courthouse. And again, remember, I don't walk for them. I don't use my energy to help them oppress me. So I make them drag me, and they do drag me. And the funny thing is just a few minutes before, I was trying to get in the courtroom without a mask, right? And they wouldn't let me in. And now they're trying to drag me into the courtroom without a mask, and ultimately drag me in there. And of course, then they load me in a vehicle, take me to the Ada County Jail, try to book me in, but I don't talk to them and I don't help them. So they throw me in a holding cell, and I sat there for, I think, 32, 35 hours, something like that. And, you know, I won't cry to you about how miserable it is in there, but, you know, I had actually layered up because I knew how cold it was. And they saw that I had layers on. So 4 or 5 of them, I don't look at them because I don't want to hate them. I don't want to hate anybody. So I don't really look at them. I just, you know, I don't look at them. So that if I see them on the street or something like that, I don't have animosity towards them. I don't want to live that way. But anyhow, 4 or 5 of them came into the room, literally body slammed me on the concrete, stripped my clothes off, and took all those layers. Left me in my garments, my underwear, and including my socks and everything. They stripped everything, and then after they left for a little while, then they threw my jeans back through the little hole in the door, and I was able to put them back on. But that's the situation I was in. So I was down to, you know, very little clothing, no socks, and that room is literally like a meat locker. It is extremely cold, and there's nothing. It's just concrete. And what happens is at first it's okay, but as things go on, and you know, I felt like the Lord was strengthening me. I felt like I could endure as long as I needed to, but what happens is over time your body temperature starts to drop and you get very, very cold, and your feet are extremely cold because literally that cold concrete just starts to move right through you, and it transfers heat right, or transfers cold and takes the heat out of your body. And so you start to get your feet so cold that you can't stay on the concrete anymore. So then you lay down, and then your body gets so cold that you can't lay there very long, probably about 10 minutes, and you actually start to shiver. You can't lay down much longer. Even if you move around, you can't lay down there much longer. So then you got to get up again, and then you don't have very long, even if you're pacing, before your feet are so cold. And so it's this going back and forth, back and forth. And then what the problem is you get sleep deprived too, because you can't sleep more than 10 minutes. You literally wake up, you're woken up because of the cold, and your body is shivering. So then you get up, you pace around, and sometimes, like I said, on the toilet, kind of pick up my feet a little bit and try to get a break that way. But that's not very comfortable, and you can't sleep. So anyhow, that's the situation. I'm not crying to you about it. You know, it's completely wrong. It's designed that way. That's why they strip your clothes off you. That's why they take your socks. It is a form of very unusual punishment, and it is cruel. It is absolutely cruel. But that's what happens, and you know, so, and every hour seems like, you know, 3 to 5 hours. It's, you know, it's a long time. Anyhow, so the next day, that's what happened. So the next day, now I'm into, you know, 24, 25 hours. And ultimately, part of the reason why I was in there is because they told me that in order to go through the booking process and to get to the, the housing areas, that I would have to wear a mask and that I would be strip searched. And so I wasn't going to go through that. And then 24 hours later, they come in and say, well, we'll book you without a mask. And, I also had an arraignment, which was ridiculous. And then the judge said, he's going to hold the $10,000 bond. And he also said that, I have to, my terms of release are that I wear a mask and show up to the hearings and all that. And of course, I didn't agree to that. And I'll never wear a mask because I don't feel like I can't. So, but that was his order. I never agreed to it. He did order it. I didn't have to sign it or anything, or I never would have. I'd probably still be in there. And once that got done, they set another trial date for May 15th. And so I'm like, well, I don't want to sit in here for the next 2.5 months or 2 months. And so I actually it is 2.5 months. And so anyway, so then I bonded out, and I made sure that Aaron was bonding out too, because I wasn't going to leave him in there alone. And so I bonded out, and was a very cold, icicle type person when I come out of there, but made it, and my wife was there, and friends were there, and Aaron came out, and that's the situation. But this is what's interesting, because now they have a date set for May 15th. And if the mask mandate at the courthouse is still in place, which, who knows? They're psychos. The masks mean nothing but tyranny. And of course, the courts like to be tyrannical, so they're probably going to keep it in place as long as they can. And so if they're in place, then May 15th, guess what happens? The exact same thing. I go to court. They won't let me in. They probably will put like a $50,000 bond on me then, and arrest me for failure to appear, even though I'm right there trying to get in. And so that's the cycle. And then they may not even let me out that time. They may force me to, stay in jail, and then, they'll probably transport me to trial and try to force me to put a handcuff or put a mask on. I won't. I'll take it off. And eventually they'll probably handcuff me behind my back and have officers there keeping the mask on my face while I go through trial. Because that's the scenario, right? But it is what it is, because we do it as right and we let the consequences follow. And I feel in my heart that I should not put a mask on. And I believe that it is our duty to make sure that we do what we feel is right. I also believe, as far as those that might be going, well, it's just a mask. It's not just a mask, because every time you put a mask on, what you're doing is you are telling somebody else, whoever made that mandate, whoever made those forceful actions, you're telling them that they have a right to tell you what to do with your body. And that is extremely dangerous. When other people think that they have a right to control your body, and you have given them that belief, or you have allowed them to have that belief, it is extremely, extremely dangerous. And ultimately is the cause of why, over 180 million people in the 20th century were killed by their own government. 180 to 250 million, 180 million to 250 million people were murdered by their own government. And it started out very small each time, was just a little thing that they would push. And the people would comply. And then they would do something else. They would push, people would comply. And it got worse and worse, and people would comply, until it got to the point where they were actually taking lives in mass numbers. And that's why you have to stop it at the beginning. For example, If you don't answer the question, and we haven't done it very good in this country answering the question of why we shouldn't have, or why we shouldn't wear a mask, or that we shouldn't wear a mask because we own our bodies. We haven't done a very good answering that question. And because we haven't answered the mask question, now we're going to have to answer the shot question, the vaccination question. And, you know, if we would have answered the mask question that, look, our body belongs to us, nobody else. You can't tell us to wear a mask. You can't force us to put a man-made filter over our mouth. Because we didn't answer that affirmatively, now we got to answer whether they have a right to inject us with a needle and put something unknown and terrible into our bodies. So anyway, think about that. It's not just about a mask. And also, but most importantly, it's about your conscience. You need to do what is right no matter what. Do what is right, let the consequences follow. So just on a happy note, so you don't worry too much about, you know, it all happening again. And it might very well. But I do believe that we'll prevail through the litigation process, through the motions. I do believe that God has given us an advantage, and that we will have the case dismissed because the judge will be compelled. And so, anyway, that's the rest of the story. I'm kind of long-winded. Just thank you for, keeping your eye on myself and my family. I will say that in that cell, it's very difficult, but I felt the Spirit of the Lord there. I remember kneeling down and everything, when you're in those situations, everything becomes, the perspective becomes very clear. And the most important things become very clear as the most important things. And of course, the most important thing in my life is my relationship with God, and my relationship with my wife, and then my relationship with my children. And I want to be a good father. I want to be a good husband, and I want to be a good son. And I'm grateful for the experiences that I get to have by doing what is right, even if they're difficult. And so I leave this with you for you to judge. If you felt like what I did was right, there's plenty of video on it. I don't really have it captured. There's tons of video that shows what happened at the courthouse and how the officers treated the people, and all of that. So I would recommend, if you are still interested, to go find that. Go to like Lori Marr's web or Facebook, or Alicia Peterson's Facebook. I think she's got it. Others will have it too. Brian Bowermaster, he probably captured a lot of it. Those are some names that you could go to their Facebook pages and see what happened there by video. And so thank you for your time, and I'll keep you posted. I don't know how to stop this thing. Hang on one sec. I gotta go. There we go.